Y'all see I'm back with another one for today. It's the weekend actually. And no, I am not sponsored by Remy. It's just my favorite cognac or champagne or whatever the hell y'all want to call it out there. Yeah, getting loose. Get a little ready. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So, today's episode is called I'm Too Focused to Explain Myself. So just judge me. I want to be clear about what I mean when I say this. I am not saying that I am above criticism. I am not saying I'm perfect. I am not saying that you can't disagree with me. As y'all see, I went and got my dog. However, I'm saying that my perspective didn't come from random vibes or from people trying to be edgy. My perspective came from, take a seat. Take a seat. Sorry. My perspective came from serious study and years of following questions that most people avoid. It came from reading and comparing ideas and testing claims against history, human behavior, and even evidence. So if someone wants to judge my conclusions, then that's completely fine. I just want people to understand that the process that shaped those conclusions. So in this episode, I'm going to explain how my study of philosophy, religious history, theology, anthropology, and a little of astrophysics shape the niche that you see on this channel today. I'm going to keep the jargon low so people can understand me because I've been told that my jargon is a little out of range. And I'm going to keep this grounded in clear ideas. So let's get into it. I'm CJ Everson, and welcome to The Jewish Skeptic. A lot of people assume that skepticism starts with anger. People act like you become a skeptic because you got hurt, because you want to sin, or because you're trying to be different. That story is convenient, but it's not accurate for many of us skeptics, actually. For me, this is not about rebellion. It actually began with questions. I didn't start trying to destroy religion or mock people's beliefs on purpose, y'all. I started by trying to understand what I believed and why I believed it. I started by asking what would count as a good reason, what would count as evidence, what would count as wishful thinking, you know? Now, I want to say something careful because I value honesty. I'm not claiming to know everything. I'm also not pretending that independent study is the same way as earning formal degrees. What I am saying is that I took the study seriously enough that it reshaped how I think. That is what I mean when I say this niche was groomed over time. Now, before you argue about religion, science, or God, you need to ask a more basic question. You need to ask how humans reason in the first place. Philosophy helped me answer that. Philosophy is not about fancy words. Philosophy is about learning how to think clearly and how to check your own mind. It pushes you to ask questions like, what counts as evidence and what is a good reason to believe something? It also forces you to face a painful truth, which is that people can deeply convince and still be wrong. One of the most important lessons I learned is this. See, feeling convinced is not the same as being correct. And human history is full of people who were confident, persuasive, and wrong. This is not an insult. It's just reality in the real world, people. Philosophy also taught me the burden of, the idea of the burden of proof. The burden of proof means that if you make a claim, especially a big claim like the Bible, you are responsible for supporting it. Other people are not responsible for disapproving it. This matters a lot because many arguments about religion quietly reverse that burden. A person will say something like this is true. And then instead of offering strong, they will say, prove me wrong. That is not the same standard. If you want serious conversation, you have to be serious about the standards. Confidence is real cheap, but evidence is real fucking expensive. I had to take a hit off of that one because that low key was a bar. Yeah, I'm on one today. Religious history. Strap on your seatbelt. See, religious history is where my bubble popped. When you grow up inside one belief system, it often feels unique. That's the word. It feels like it is the only real story, and it stands alone by itself. That is normal because every tradition teaches its own narrative from the inside. However, when you start to study religious history across cultures and across time, you start to see patterns that are quite frequent. And I want to be careful here because I do not want to overstate the case. Similarity does not automatically mean copying, or correlation doesn't automatically mean direct borrowing. Still, the patterns matter though, because they weaken the idea that any tradition appeared in history without human influence. When you compare religions, you start noticing reoccurring themes. You see flood narratives. You see divine judgment themes. You see cosmic battles between good and evil. You see apocalyptic expectations. You see stories about divine beings, miracles, and even sacred law. None of this automatically proves that any religion is false, but what it does show is that human religious imagination has a recognizable structure, people. It shows that humans across cultures reach for certain kinds of stories to explain to the world and to guide life. Religious history also makes one thing very clear, though. I will say that. Belief systems develop over time. They respond to political pressures and cultural changes and historical events. They absorb ideas and reframe old ones, and they sometimes split and go separate ways or go into their own little new movements, like I told y'all on the Christianity episode. See, this is where both sides make mistakes, though. Some skeptics are developed and instantly assume that everything is fake. Some believers see development and refuse to admit that anything ever changed. The honest picture is usually more complex than either extreme, though. Now, I hope I was clear when I broke that down. Okay? Now, let's talk about anthropology. See, anthropology was one of the biggest pieces for me because anthropology doesn't question with the start which religion is true. Anthropology starts with a different question. Anthropology asks why humans across cultures create religious beliefs at all. That question forces you to look at human psychology, human evolution, and even human social behavior. Anthropology helped me understand that humans are pattern seeking by nature. Humans are constantly scanning the world for meaning, danger, and intention. And from an evolution perspective, that makes, like I said on another episode, if you hear a noise in the bushes, it is safer to assume something caused it than to ignore it. It is safer to assume agency even if you are wrong sometimes. However, the same mental system that helped our ancestors survive can also misfire. Humans can see patterns into randomness. Humans can infer intention where there is none. Humans can have powerful experiences that feel completely real, even when the interpretation is not reliable. I want to say this carefully. This does not mean every religious experience is fake, though. It does not mean the human brain does not work. To me, what it does mean is that the human brain is capable of generating intense and convincing experiences, especially under stress, expectation, grief, isolation, or even ritual. Anthropology also shows how belief systems strengthen social cohesion. Religion often functions as social glue. It creates community, reinforces shared values, and helps groups coordinate behavior. Now, that don't mean religion is always a deliberate conspiracy or a control system. Now, I say that because I be trolling. Sometimes these systems emerge naturally because they work socially. Still, once you see the social function clearly, you start asking sharper questions about how beliefs began and how they spread and how they became as powerful as they are today. When you understand human cognition and culture, beliefs start looking real mysterious and they start looking real human. Now, let me touch on astrophysics a little bit because this is a stickler. It's a stickler. See, Astrophysics didn't make me arrogant. If anything, astrophysics is what made me more humble. When you study the universe seriously, you confront scale that your brain is not built to handle, really. You confront distances that are hard to imagine and time frames that make human history look like a blink. You also want to be precise here. Well, I want to be precise here. I am not saying science disapproves God. Science is not always designed to answer metaphysical questions because science is focused on testable models and measurable predictions. What astrophysics does do is expand the landscape of uncertainty. It reminds you how much we still don't know as the human race. You learn. The more you learn about the universe, the less comfortable you become pretending that certainty is easy. When people speak about absolute confidence, about ultimate reality, you pay attention because I also became cautious. I learned that the universe, and I learned about the universe. And the less comfortable I became pretending certainty was simple once I started to learn more about the universe. So when people look at this content or my content and say, I'm just trying to argue, or I'm just trying to be difficult, or that I'm just rebelling and I'm mad about God, I have to be honest. That tells me they are looking at the surface and not the foundation. This perspective did not appear out of nowhere, people. It came from studying how humans reason. It came from studying how religions develop. It came from studying how cultures form beliefs. It came from learning how vast the universe is and how limited human certainty can be. You are free to disagree with my conclusions. I mean that genuinely. Disagreement is healthy and pushback is welcome. However, if you're going to judge the position, you should judge the work also. I am not claiming perfection, and I am not claiming final answers. But I am saying that I followed the questions that led me here, even when the answer was uncomfortable. That is why I say I'm too focused to explain myself. If you want to judge me, go ahead. Just judge me fairly and judge the work too. And I'll see you on the next one. No fear, no dogma, just clarity. I'm CJ Everson. I'm the Jewish skeptic. See y'all later. Peace.
Do you know what I found? The more you know, the less you know.